This video is just going to focus on building a form, making the form so it opens up, adding controls to the form, and accessing those controls on a form through a sub or a function or whatever it is we're going to do. So here we are in VBA. We're just going to click on Insert here, and we're going to go to User Form. Notice the form is right here. It's just kind of blank. Here are the controls that we can add to it. Here it is in the project browser under Forms, and here are the properties of the form. So I can change this to, I can go ahead and change the name of the form. Notice it changed the name there. The name is important because that's how I reference the form and the components that are, or the controls that are on the form. Also, I can change the caption, which is this right here. And I can go demo form. Same naming conventions on forms as with subs and stuff, where you want to no spaces and special characters and things like that. Now if I want to see what the form looks like, I just click on it and click Run or press F5, and you can see the form comes up. There it is, demo form. I can click on it. I can't click anywhere else while it's open because it's in what's called Show Modal form or format, which just means that nothing else in the application can happen while the form is open. Down here in the properties, we can change the border style, the background style, all sorts of things like that. If I want to be able to do anything while the form is open, change Show Modal to False, and then I can take a look at this, and I can click and I can do other things while the form is open and come back to the form. So there might be times when you want your form open, you want to interact with the spreadsheet, and there may be times when you don't want to. So here's our form. We're going to now insert a module, and the first thing I'm going to put in my module is Open Demo Form, a sub. Now the name isn't particularly important. You can name it whatever you want. And the way we're going to open it is we're going to reference the object, and I'm going to put dot, and these are all of the things that forms can do and all of the properties that forms have. The ones in green are what they can do. The ones with the finger and the card are properties. So one of the things it can do is show. So what I'm going to do is show the form when this runs. In fact, if I press F5 and run through this, it opens up the form. So now I'm going to put a button on this screen. So we'll just go into design mode, insert. I'm just going to put a form button there. So we'll go ahead and change this. Take it out of design mode, and it opens the form for us. So now let's look at closing the form. So let's do a sub. There are two ways to close the form. I'll show you the first one. Okay, here's the first one where we hide the form. And we're going to put a button on the form that calls this sub. So I'm just going to take this button here. We'll put it on. We'll come back and rename the button in just a second. I'm going to double click on the button. Actually, let's go ahead and rename it now. It'll give us some issues down the road. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to call this CBT close, and the caption we're going to have close form. Now I'm going to double click on it, and I'm going to have it called close demo form. So we come in here and we open the form and we push the button, and it calls that sub and closes the form. So we're going to do another thing to the form. We're going to add a label here. We'll just call this, we'll put the caption to be named. Labels don't have values. As you can see here, there is no value here. Labels have captions. And we'll call this label name, and we'll change the font to 14. And I'm also going to add a text box. And I'm going to change the font on this one to 14. Shrink this up just a little bit. And I'm going to call this text box name. So here we go. When the form opens up, I can type in the text box. When I hit close form and then open form, notice the name is still there. Let's take a look at why. When you open the form up and you look at the text box has a value. In this case, the value is empty. I could set it to a value. Let's go ahead and put my name there, and then you'll notice that that shows up, and when the form opens up, when we run it, that's what comes up there. So basically, if you put something in value, that's the default value. I can change it, and when I go ahead and close the form and reopen it, it's got Roger there. Because what I've done is replace the value in the text box. Now I typed in Rob, so when I close it all the way, it's going to go back to Rob instead of Roger. Let me take this off for just a second. So we'll go back and take the value out. The text also disappeared there. So we've taken that value out. Let's look at the way we closed it. The way we closed it was to hide the form. Now a form gets created in memory of the computer before the user can actually see it visually. And so all we're really doing is hiding it, and then when we click show, it's bringing that form back up. If I were to do something like this, unload demo form. Now what that's going to do is actually clear the form out of memory so that when I run this, and I type something in there and I close the form and I bring it back, it's actually cleared out. So there are times when you want your form to open up with nothing in it, and there are times when you want it to bring back the data that was there, and you just have to know what you want to do. And you know, either hide it or unload it depending on what it is you're trying to do. In this case, I'm just going to leave unload there for now. So now let's look at the form one more time, and let's add a combo box. In this combo box, we'll go ahead and set the font here. Combo boxes also have a row source, and the row source is very similar to the list fill range on the combo boxes that you see on an Excel spreadsheet. So if I want it to go to the data sheet, A1 to A7, oh, didn't put it in right. If you don't put it in right, it gives you an error. Oh, I don't have a data sheet. I'm sorry. This is in sheet 1. You'll get an error if it doesn't go in right, and you'll know. So now that went in right, so that was fine. And what we're going to see here is this: we're going to get a list of the days. So when I open this form, there's the list of the days. Now if I were to change this list by deleting a couple of these, what you'll note is that I've got these blank rows here. So if I want my list to shrink or expand, depending on what it finds here, then I'm probably going to want to do a loop to load that up. And we've talked about that in class before, but I'll show you very quickly how I might do something like that. So before I show the form, I'm going to want to load the form. Basically, this gets it up in memory and makes it so that I can actually start doing things to it. And so one of the things that I'm going to do, you guys have all seen this before a few times. So I'm just going to do a loop and have it go down and find where the blank row is. In other words, what the last row on that sheet is of all of those names. And then what I can do is I can come in here and I can set the properties. I can go form, demo form, dot, now I want the combo box. I didn't rename it, which I should have. And I want to set the row source. And that's going to be equal, and I have to put everything in quotes. It's not data sheet, sorry. Now in this case I want to do A1 to A7. You can see we've got 7 days there, but I'm going to delete 2. And A1 to A7 is what defaults there, but now I only want to go down to C row, which has the blank row -1, so I just want to go to the last row that has something in it. So now when I run this, oh, obviously I'm getting an error here, and that's because I put that at 0 instead of 1. Sorry about that. We'll go ahead and run this again. So now that opens up, and I only get the 5 days. So if we were to add the other days back in, go ahead and close it and reopen the form, then it's automatically going to set those values. And so what the implications of that are is that anything that you want to do to the form, any values that you want to put in the form, any condition that you want to set a control to, you can do that. You would load the form, and then before you showed it, you would do whatever you wanted to do to it. We're going to add a couple more things to the form, and I'll hopefully show you what that means. Let me add a couple option buttons. So there's option button 1 and option button 2. And let's suppose we're going to change this. We'll just leave the names for now. We'll change this, the caption, to female and male. So suppose person wants to, we want to indicate whether the person is male or female. Well, we might use option buttons, and so let's open the form. And so you put your name, and you can click one of these, and option buttons work in groups. Well, oops. The thing about option buttons is that they have a group name. So all option buttons that have the same group name click with each other. So those two are clicking. Oops, let's open this up. Those two option buttons were working together. I could only have one clicked at a time because they had the same group name. Now that one is blank and the other one has a group name gender, then I can click more than one at a time. So what I want to do here is make sure all the option buttons that I want to have working together have the same group name. So now that male and female both have gender, if I were to put some other option buttons on here that don't have a group name, now when we go ahead and take a look at this form, male and female work together, and these two work together. If none of them had a group name, I would only be able to select one of the 4. We'll get rid of these. Now let's suppose that I want to take the values that were selected here and put them on the form. So I'm going to put another button on here. We'll call this Add Data. we're just going to add whatever's on the form to the worksheet. So what I want to do is I want to take the name, I want to take the day, I want to take the value in the option buttons and put them on the worksheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write a sub. And I'm going to indicate where I want it to go. So let's put it in C1. And that's going to be equal to, once again I'm going to say the form. And I want to take it first from the text box, name. And I want to take from the combo box whatever values there. I want to take from option button 1 and put that in C3. And I want to take from option button 2, put it in C4, and I guess I should get the value here. So now this sub I want to run when this button is pushed. So I just go ahead and I paste that there. So we come back here and run the whole thing. And hit add to sheet, and female was true, male was false, Rob and Tuesday, so I went ahead and put it there. I could also put a button on here that's going to clear the form. And I might do something like this. So I'm going to set the combo box and the text box equal to empty, whereas here I'm going to set the values to false. And so we'll put a button on that calls clear form data. When I clear, I'll go to empty, these go back to not selected, and I can clear them out. So notice the form is open the whole time. I'm not running any loop to keep it open. I'm not doing something until a button is pressed. It's just when a button is pressed, then I do these different things. So the last thing I want to show you is a spin button and a text box. So if we come here and we put a spin button on, we'll just leave a name spin button 1, but you'll notice down here that it has a max and a min. Every time I click up, it adds it by the small change, which in this case is 1. It adds 1 to it, and every time I click the down arrow, it takes 1 away. And it starts off at 0, so if you press a down arrow, nothing's going to happen because the minimum is 0. If you put a negative on here, it could go into negatives. And I'm going to also add a text box here. And we'll go ahead and change the font so that you can see the size and everything. And now you'll see when I run this form that nothing really happens when I push the button. The value on the spin button is changing, but you're not seeing any change here because I need to link this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to write a sub. We'll call it spin button clicked. when that happens, what we want to do is we want to take the text box that I just added, which is text box 1, and set the value to the spin button value. So every time I click that, now this isn't going to run by itself, so I'm going to take the name of this. I'm going to come to the form. I'm going to double click on this, and you'll notice up here that I have a lot of choices here. When I enter the spin button, when I change the spin button, when I key up, when I key down or spin down, all these different things. I'm just going to go on change here. When the spin button changes, I want to call spin button clicked. Now let's see what happens. So now, as I click that, the value goes up, 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 and the value goes down. Notice it was blank when I first came on here, so what I might want to do is come up here and take this line of code. So before the form opens up, I just want to make this text box and the spin button the same. So if we open this up, now that starts off on 0 where the true value is, instead of blank. Another thing that we could do here is make it so that when we change this, it changes spin button value. So you'll notice right now if I change this to 56 and then click the spin button up one, it's going to go back to 31. So we'll look at how we might fix that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write another sub down here at the bottom. We'll do something called user change number or whatever. And we're just going to do the reverse of this. So I'm just going to take this right here. Oops, I put it in the wrong spot. Let's see. Take that out. And what we want to do here is we want to say the spin button is now equal to what the text box is when the user changes the number. So we'll just go ahead and copy that. We'll come into the form here. We'll double click there. When the text box changes, I want to call the user number changed. So let's take a look. Form comes up, moving that up. If I change that to 20, then I decide to go up, moves to 21. If I change it to 100, it goes down to 99 when I click down. So that's the basic form. That's how to put controls on it. That's how to link controls. It's how to get values into them when you start. It's how to get values out of them when you want to get values out of them. There we go. Change there again. And everything else from that is kind of a derivation of that.